This video contains the fair use of third-party content and does not violate copyright code or any of YouTube's terms of service.
Welcome back to Stop Theocracy, a channel that is dedicated to, well, stopping theocracy. Today I'm going to be responding to a comment that was left on a recent video of mine titled Stop Theocracy. And in that video I had said this. On my mind today, unfortunately, is those bigoted piece of crap Christian conservatives that want to bring about some kind of oppressive, intolerant theocracy. As of the moment that I am filming this video, they have already begun to infiltrate our government and change the rules. We saw an overturn of Roe v. Wade and the start of abortion bans across the nation. We know that they also want to ban gay marriage and acts of sodomy, and we can of course expect them to target interracial marriage soon afterward. We know that they've got people on the ground who are calling for the enslavement of non-whites and the execution of homosexuals and those who enable them. As I understand it, at the present time, these villains represent a minority of the population. Yet, they've got quite a bit of power right now, and they're using it. And they're going to keep using it, unless we do something. The current president, Joe Biden, who I definitely did not vote for, appears to have decided to just not do anything about it. You know, to just kind of let them get away with it. If the American people want something done, then they can vote Democrat in the next election. To which someone responded with this comment, which starts off by saying,
"You criticize the Democrats for telling people to vote for them."
But this, of course, is a type of logical fallacy known as a straw man argument. Or in other words, our commenter here is misrepresenting what I've said and is responding to that misrepresentation instead of rebutting my actual argument. Don't get me wrong, he eventually seems to get around to addressing it later, but suffice it to say, I was not simply criticizing Democrats for telling people to vote for them. Really, I was more expressing my frustration with President Biden for trying to shirk his responsibility instead of actually doing his job.
They have had multiple opportunities to codify Roe into law over the past 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and they haven't done it. And if they're going to keep campaigning on this point, they should actually do something.
Of course we're going to be critical of milquetoast, pathetic Democrats who haven't accomplished a damn thing.
Isaac, earlier this week, you came out with reporting from dozens of Democratic sources who you report are frustrated with Biden's lack of urgency on this particular issue. One of them you quoted called the White House rudderless, aimless, and hopeless. Another you quoted said, "There's no fight."
When the president does not come out and does not really state a declarative position on the filibuster, when he does not state a declarative position on court expansion, he is essentially putting his foot off the gas.
If Joe Biden wants votes, earn them. Do something to earn the vote.
The only thing he's gotten done is shown how inept he is.
The fact that they haven't had a plan already is a version of executive malpractice.
You're just going to sit by while the Supreme Court takes a sledgehammer to abortion rights?
I just find this to be absolutely disgusting, to ask for our vote while not doing his job.
All you do is go around all day, every day, explaining how you can't do anything.
What are you going to do? You should probably go vote more.
The president, who campaigned on putting America back together again after 4 years of deep divisions, appears to have stopped trying.
Voting blue is not enough. Democrats, recall your bluff. Voting blue is not enough. Democrats, recall your bluff.
Suffice it to say, Joe's initial inaction on this topic was hit with a bit of backlash. Turns out the popular opinion is generally something like this.
The people voted, so how about doing your job and passing laws to codify contraception, marriage equality, and all the other rights the Supreme Court has basically threatened to take away?
57% of women voted for Joe Biden. They already elected him to office to hopefully do something in this situation, and he's not. This is a situation where the executive branch should be taking action because it's very clear that the judicial branch has overstepped. They've overreached with their power, and it needs to be corrected by the other branches. Joe Biden is in a position to do something about this.
We have presidential elections for a reason. We vote for presidential candidates for a reason. Those votes get counted for a reason. It's because the popular vote is supposed to matter enough that the president can actually do what he was elected to do as long as it's nothing awful. I personally, of course, didn't vote for Biden.
Gang, gang.
Because I knew he wasn't going to be any good. But apparently, one of the reasons many women did vote for him is because he said stuff like this.
I would send immediately to the desk of the United States Congress when I'm elected president, if I'm elected president, a codification of Roe v. Wade amended by Casey.
And of course, we all know he didn't do that. Biden says the right to choose is fundamental, but is not prepared to call for a change to the filibuster to protect those rights. So those fundamental rights have to go because I really like the filibuster. I got to think for it. Is the filibuster a right? No. What about the right to privacy? That's a fundamental right. But why do you want to keep the thing that's not a right and you have to get rid of the thing that's fundamental? Because if I actually codified it into law, then people would stop voting for Democrats. Because then what would they get them to vote for? We don't do shit for them.
Now, in response to the backlash, Biden has recently come out with some executive orders that might be helpful to some people in some way, if this seemingly inept administration can manage to do something right. But folks are generally left feeling like it's too little too late.
So the president says that his order will safeguard access to reproductive health care services, including abortion and contraception. But, I mean, if it actually did that, it would be going back to Roe, right? So it's not clear in any way how this order will be enforced. And that's the reality, right? It seems like a lot of words. Plus, he acknowledged Congress ultimately has control over the issue. And several Democrats are simply saying this is not anywhere close to enough. People like Congresswoman Judy Chu, who tweeted, quote, with Republicans working endlessly to pave a way for a federal abortion ban, this is not enough.
So they mentioned the abortion pill. That's why I got excited. That's why I reread it several times. Like, okay, abortion pill, how are we going to get it to the red states? Oh, there's no proposal. It's to further study the abortion pill. I don't need to study it. It works. It's good. We should get it to the red states. They're like, okay, yeah, maybe later, but we'll have to study the study of the study. Okay, you're useless. You're useless. Okay, so then they say, okay, give us more votes. All right, look, no problem, no problem. How many? Give me a number. Give me a number. Give me a number at which you would do goddamn anything.
But anyway, the commenter's straw man argument is used as a setup for another logical fallacy known as a red herring. Or in other words, it distracts from the problem at hand, Biden's lack of proper action, to go off on some other tangentially relevant topic.
You criticize the Democrats for telling people to vote for them, but more people doing precisely that is what would have stopped this from happening in the first place. What's happening right now is a direct consequence of the 2016 election. Hillary lost Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin by less than 1% of the vote. Had the people who voted for Jill Stein in those states voted for Hillary instead, she would have won those states and consequently won the general election. Had she won the general election, the 3 Supreme Court justices that were nominated by Trump, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Coney Barrett, would not have been nominated by Hillary, and thus would not have been seated on the court. Consequently, the Supreme Court would not have had the votes to overturn Roe v. Wade.
Wow, I guess the Clinton campaign should have tried to have been more appealing to Green Party voters then, instead of rigging the election in a way that would help get Trump elected.
Let's remember how we got Donald Trump, because this is interesting because they're doing it again. So how did Hillary Clinton's campaign deliberately elevated Donald Trump with its Pied Piper strategy? Now, we told you about this when it actually happened. Most other people aren't going to tell you about this. So there's this memo. This guy, WikiLeaks, revealed this. This is a memo. And what does that memo say? Here's the important part. It was their strategy inside the Clinton campaign. The Clinton campaign decided to elevate Donald Trump so they could run against Donald Trump because they thought they could beat Donald Trump. Turns out they couldn't beat anybody. In this scenario, we don't want to marginalize the more extreme candidates, but make them more So they don't want to marginalize Donald Trump. They wanted to make them a Pied Piper candidate who actually represents the mainstream of the Republican Party. The Clinton campaign wrote. As examples of these Pied Piper candidates, the memo named Donald Trump as well as Senator Ted Cruz and Ben Carson. It said, we need to be elevating the Pied Piper candidates so that they are the leaders of the pack and tell the press to take them seriously. So Hillary Clinton's campaign and the Democrats were telling the press to focus on Donald Trump and take him seriously as an attempt to elevate him so that he could become the nominee so that they can run against him. And of course, that's how we got Donald Trump, because they're such incompetent, corrupt corporatists that nobody would vote for her. She's the most repulsive candidate in the history of our country. And they tried to jam them down your throat. Here's another one. So now I want to show you this. Democrats have not stopped doing that. They're playing you like a chump. Democrats condemn MAGA Republicans while boosting their campaigns. What does this mean? Here's from MSNBC. Watch this.
What you're looking at here is the Republican Senate primary in Colorado. Now, the distinction here between O'Day and Hanks was pretty stark on a couple of issues, notably the 2020 presidential election. O'Day said the 2020 election was on the level. He accepted Biden as the legitimate winner of the 2020 election. Ron Hanks, his opponent, a state legislator in Colorado, actually attended Donald Trump's speech in D.C. on January 6th, was part of that crowd that marched to the Capitol. So that was one of the distinctions between them. There was also a distinction on the issue of abortion. O'Day calling himself pro-choice, Hanks sponsoring legislation that would ban abortion in all cases, including rape and incest. So O'Day was the candidate national Republicans were hoping would win this primary. They believed him to be more electable. Democrats, meanwhile, spent millions of dollars trying to elevate Ron Hanks in this primary, believing that if they could get Hanks nominated, that would make this a much safer seat for Michael Bennet.
Democrats aren't just doing it one place. They're doing it all over the place. Watch this.
One other story of note, I think, to tell you here, we talk about Democrats getting involved in some of these Republican primaries. In Illinois, Democrats spent upwards of $30 million trying to assure that this, exactly what you're seeing here, would happen.
Here in the Republican primary for governor, the Trump-backed candidate, Darren Bailey, wins overwhelmingly against Richard Irvin. He was sort of the moderate Republican candidate. Democrats, J.B. Pritzker, the Democratic governor running for re-election, Democratic Governors Association, they spent upwards of $30 million trying to prop up Bailey in this primary, and they did get their way in this one.
Democrats spent big trying to get Bailey boosted here, believing again that he'd be a very beatable candidate. Bailey gets the nomination. It sets up for him a general election showdown with the incumbent governor, J.B. Pritzker. Pritzker won this seat in 2018. He got 55% of the vote back then. This is a gamble Democrats are taking in Illinois. They think they've identified a very beatable candidate. They spent very heavily. Now we'll see if their bet pays off as they get the Republican opponent they were hoping for the governorship.
So they spent, the Democrats, instead of spending $30 million on their own candidate, instead of spending $30 million to help people, they spent $30 million to prop up a right-wing mental case who's against women's right to choose and everything that Democrats care about. There was another politician that was running that was more moderate, that was more agreeable to the Democrats' positions. They didn't want that guy. They don't want you to have two good choices. They don't want you to have two choices that show that they're the same, because they are. They need to show you that this guy's a crazy maniac. So this is what Malcolm X talked about, that they have to show you a fox so you run towards the wolf. Right? So that's exactly what this is. So they go, look at that fox. Look at the Republicans, how crazy they are. Now you have to come vote for us, but they're a wolf in sheep's clothing. So go ahead, Kurt.
Okay, so this video, this person sent me this video, okay, that I sent Jimmy.
It's a very famous person.
Yeah, this is what they texted me. I had no idea this happens. The Democratic Party actually donated millions to extremist Republicans to defeat centrist Republicans that believe in the same things as them. These guys aren't even criticizing this on MSNBC. They're just stating it as a fact of strategy. It's just interesting to them.
Yes.
My friend was blown away watching this. They couldn't believe what they were looking at.
Yeah.
And had no idea it was like that. And a bunch of people have no idea that it's like that.
They have no idea that that's how we got Donald Trump. They don't know that's why we got Donald Trump, that Hillary Clinton and the Democrats rigged it so they could run against Donald Trump. But of course, they couldn't beat him because they're so corrupt and people were done voting for corporate Democrats.
Now, I want everyone to keep this shit in mind as I read the next section of this red herring commentary.
Now, the Democrats had been warning people of this very outcome during the 2016 election and long before it. The Republicans have been openly signaling their intent to overturn Roe v. Wade for the past 40 years, and specifically their intent to only seat Supreme Court justices who would vote to overturn it. In 2016, it was clear that several justices were approaching their retirement age, meaning the next president would likely seat several new justices. Trump openly declared he would nominate pro-life justices, and Hillary declared she would nominate pro-choice justices. Us Democrats saw this coming miles away and warned everyone, but not enough people listened.
Gee, I wonder why. But what can I say, folks? The commenter's right. Not enough people listened, especially the Democrats who rigged the primary.
You want Joe Biden to do something other than tell people to vote, but his ability to do anything about it was actively removed by not enough people voting for the Democrats over the Republicans. There is no mechanism in our government for the president to override a Supreme Court decision, and it would be bad if there were, because it would also work in the opposite direction. If the president could override the Supreme Court, then Trump could have just overridden Roe v. Wade during his term. Without these kinds of limits on presidential power, that would basically mean the presidency was a dictatorship.
A democratically elected president doing what the voters want him to do is a dictatorship? No. It's a democracy. The Supreme Court is the branch that's acting like a dictatorship here. It is well within Biden's authority to check them.
To check the gross overreach and abuse of authority by the Supreme Court of the United States. I mean, there are so many places to go here because of the depth of misconduct and the depth of abuse of power coming out of the Supreme Court of the United States.
Several of these justices lied under oath to the public and to lawmakers in order to obtain their positions, knowingly hiding a secret agenda from public scrutiny. 2 senators, Manchin and Collins, Democrat and Republican, have both accused Justice Kavanaugh of lying to them about how he would rule on Roe. Collins has also accused Justice Gorsuch of the same, saying in a statement, quote, "This decision is inconsistent with what Justices Gorsuch and Kavanaugh said in their testimony and their meetings with me, where they both were insistent on the importance of supporting long-standing precedents that the country has relied upon."
And then there's Clarence Thomas, whose admitted malicious intent for taking the job should be reason enough to fire him. But that's not even all the reason we have.
Clarence Thomas sexually harassed Anita Hill in the workplace multiple times. She had witnesses and she had evidence.
The degree and extent of misconduct that Clarence Thomas alone, in addition to several of his colleagues, have participated and engaged in, is foundationally delegitimizing to the Supreme Court, and it is our responsibility, our constitutional duty, to rein them in.
Under Abraham Lincoln, the court was so reactionary and racist that Lincoln literally just ignored them. In order to end slavery and uphold rights of Black Americans, Lincoln and the Republican Party outright rejected the concept of judicial supremacy, arguing that it was ultimately up to the American people to interpret the meaning of the Constitution and the rights which it conferred. In his 1860 inaugural address, Lincoln declared, quote, "If the policy of the government upon vital questions affecting the whole people is to be irrevocably fixed by decisions of the Supreme Court, the instant they are made, the people will have ceased to be their own rulers, having to that extent practically resigned their government into the hands of that eminent tribunal." According to Matt Karp at Jacobin, Lincoln and his allies then proceeded to pack the court, reorganize the judiciary, and blatantly reject the court's decisions, passing laws in direct contradiction to Dred Scott and the other pro-slavery precedents which the court had set. As Karp writes, it's no accident that, quote, "the greatest democratic expansion in U.S. political history, the era of emancipation and Reconstruction, demanded a direct political attack on the power of the Supreme Court."
I think power should be taken from the Supreme Court, and there are various ways to do that.
FDR effectively declared war on the court, telling the American people, quote, "The court has been acting not as a judicial body, but as a policy-making body. We have therefore reached the point as a nation where we must take action to save the Constitution from the court and the court from itself." In the game of chicken, the overwhelmingly popular FDR won, setting the stage for the greatest era of American growth, labor power, and shared prosperity in this country's history. We are at a similar moment now. Justices are behaving like kings and queens, disregarding all but their personal political agendas. And the American people are clamoring for a Lincoln-style or FDR-style reckoning with this Supreme Court.
Suffice it to say, the idea that the president doesn't have the ability to do anything here is just plain wrong. Hell, he's even made a little progress on the matter during the time I've been working on this video. Apparently, he just recently ordered doctors to offer abortions in emergency situations. It's another half measure, but it's not nothing, and it does demonstrate that there really are things he can do in this situation. But since he really can do more than just half measures, since it is possible to just reject the Supreme Court decision and do the opposite, why doesn't Biden do that? And the answer is, he doesn't want to.
Joe Biden told Mitch McConnell he was going to nominate a conservative anti-abortion attorney, Chad Meredith. as a federal judge in Kentucky. And people were like, I can't believe this. You know, they're overturning Roe, and now Biden's making a deal with Mitch McConnell where he's going to nominate an anti-choicer. Why is he doing this? What on earth could he be getting in return for it? So people probably thought, you know, politics is a dirty business. He must be making some deal. He must be getting something out of it, right? Well, no. According to McConnell himself, Mitch McConnell, he told the New York Times there was no deal with Biden to trade a nomination for other considerations in the chamber, and called the president's willingness to nominate his favored conservative judge the kind of collegiality senators used to display. Quote, this was a personal friendship gesture, McConnell added. So just so you know, when Joe Biden offers to nominate an anti-choice conservative, it's not because he wants to get anything from it. It's because he actually is doing it to be nice.
That's right. Biden's friendship with anti-abortion Republicans is more important to him than a woman's right to choose.
If you're upset about the recent Supreme Court rulings and you're wondering how we got here, Google Joe Biden and Anita Hill. The reason why Clarence Thomas is sitting on the Supreme Court is because Joe Biden would not let Anita Hill's witnesses testify. It was him. He was the one who prevented them from speaking, and Anita Hill had evidence against Clarence Thomas. If you go back and you watch those hearings and you watch the way that Joe Biden treated Anita Hill, it's absolutely disgusting. But the reason why Clarence Thomas is there, and he was there to make that vote, is because of Joe Biden, him. This is what I keep telling people. A lot of these things, a lot of the problems and issues that we have right now, if you do the research, they lead back to Joe Biden.
The main thing they can try right now is to get a bill passed in the Senate, but this is not looking promising because the Democrats only have 50 out of 100 seats, and basically no Republicans are willing to cooperate, so they need every single one of the 50 votes. But two of them, Manchin and Sinema, aren't cooperating. If they can't work out a deal in the current Senate, the only solution here would once again be to get more Democrats in the Senate, which means more people have to vote for them in the next election. Or the idea of packing the court also requires more Democrats in the Senate who would agree to vote for the justices. Each state can now make its own abortion laws, but in order to have a state legislator that keeps it legal, the states have to vote for pro-choice politicians at the state level, which is primarily going to be Democrats.
This, of course, is roughly what Joe Biden wants us to think are the options that we're limited to. But as we've already seen, since Congress and the Supreme Court are misbehaving, we really do have other options that are available. Thanks to our system of checks and balances, the president actually has the power to just overturn the Supreme Court's nefarious decision and establish abortion rights as law. We don't need another election because we already elected an allegedly pro-choice president. If he doesn't do his job, then he delegitimizes the presidency. Don't get me wrong, it's too late. Every single branch of government has already been completely delegitimized. Our system of government just simply doesn't work. It is not adequately serving the interests of the American people. It's serving some other interests. Which means that the president, most of the Supreme Court, and even much of Congress should be fired from their jobs and possibly even arrested as the war criminals that they are. They've gone to war against the people they're supposed to be helping, and that is treason.
It's just really wild to be a person that works in a corrupt institution, which is what Congress is. To try and be a normal person surrounded by so much decay and moral emptiness that frankly transcends party is very difficult. We are in a deeply violent moment. A deeply violent moment. We live in a country that lets people sleep on the street in the middle of winter. We have governments that take the homeless out of trains and throw them on the street to die. We live in a society that says if your job doesn't give you health care, you're basically bankrupt for the month or you're just out of luck. It's violence. A society that incentivizes charging so much for housing that an entire generation feels like they may never be able to own a home unless their parents gift them some generational wealth. This is barbarism. This is barbarism. Are there solutions? Yes. We know that there are evidence-based solutions that work. Can we get that past the finish line with the political environment? That's the question. There's so many different areas and issues where all of us agree. If not all, an overwhelming amount of us agree. And Congress still can't get their shit together. And I don't want to be one of those ding-dongs that just tells you to vote harder.
I, too, am concerned about the theocratic and authoritarian tendencies of the Republican Party. But you have to understand that we live in a democracy.
Or at least it's supposed to be a democracy. But since we've already voted and we aren't getting our way because the Supreme Court and Congress and blah, 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 that's not a democracy. It's just chaos.
There's a theocratic takeover happening because of the Republican base who keeps voting for that.
I mean, that's part of the problem, but since they represent a minority of the population, evidently there's more to it than that. As I've demonstrated in this video, another part of the problem is that Democratic politicians, who could be stopping theocracy, are instead allowing it to happen, and in some cases are actually helping it to happen. I want to clarify though, I'm not trying to shit on all people registered as Democrats. I get the impression most Democrats are halfway decent people. It's just that our elections are rigged, and Democrats keep getting stuck with terrible nominees, presidents, and other corrupt politicians, who are actually more conservative than they are progressive.
Bernie Sanders' winning streak continued over the weekend with a victory in the Wyoming caucuses on Saturday. Sanders beat Hillary Clinton by 12 points, 56-44, notching his 8th win in the last 9 nominating contests.
Okay, what do we do here?
I mean, it sounds like he's winning.
He's won 8 out of 9. Yep. He wins by 12 points. He may not even pick up a single delegate.
Yeah.
It's 7-6 now, with a remaining delegate to be decided later. I'm sorry. That's a crushing victory.
I know. And listen, I think that with the super delegates that they have, I think she only has to win 30% of the, she only has to get 30% of the vote in the remaining contest. I mean, talk about voters feeling like a system might be rigged.
Why are you even voting?
If you're driving a car right now, we've been talking about rigged systems. We're putting up right now a graphic. Bernie Sanders wins 56-44% in Wyoming. The delegates rewarded. Hillary Clinton, 11. Bernie Sanders, 7. Why does the Democratic Party even have voting booths?
No, why?
This system is so rigged.
It feels that way.
But we always talk about voter turnout and how important it is to do your duty as a citizen. There's absolutely no reason any of those people voted in any of those states,
I mean,
right?
What's the justification for
Please,
that?
someone tell me.
These are the rules.
No, that's not a good answer. Tell me why those people needed to go vote. Because their votes don't matter.
It turned out it's not rigged.
Do their votes matter, Mark Halper?
Yeah, they do. The votes matter.
Do they count in some way?
Depends on where you turn out.
How?
I don't think it's a
only
good system.
in some parts of the country
I don't think
it matters.
It's a good system, but it's not like
he won by 12 percentage points and lost the delegate
I don't think
count.
it's a good system. All I'm saying is it's not.
Do you
like
think
the
it's
Clinton
fair
people.
to ask you? Do you think that the Democrats
matter.
and Republicans change their delegate allotment processes after this cycle?
Only if the winner of the White House decides he or she wants to change it, which is unlikely. These are the rules.
I don't
all I'm saying is
that's
it's
not
not
what we're
like the Cruz
asking.
people or the Clinton people have gone in and fixed it or rigged it.
Okay, but I'm talking about the Democrats for now.
fair.
Let's talk about the Democrats for now.
We didn't say that.
Here is a
Right.
party
Feels bad.
who sends their activists out and have people chattering on TV and chattering on talk radio about voter disenfranchisement if you make somebody show a picture of themselves. This same party tells voters to go straight to hell when they select somebody by 12 percentage points and end up letting the other candidate who lost by 12 percentage points win the most delegates. That by definition, is voter disenfranchisement. So it is a rigged system on the Democratic side, even worse than the Republican side. And I don't know why Democratic voters put up with it.
If you say those are the rules, I'm going to lunge at your
I agree with
neck.
everything you said, except I wouldn't say it's rigged. It's not rigged. It's disenfranchisement. It's not one person, one vote.
What do
But
you
it's not
call
rigged.
it when voters going to the voting booth doesn't matter
At
as
all.
much
A
as insiders?
A messed up system.
That is a rigged.
It's not rigged.
It is a system
It doesn't-
rigged against voters. It's a system rigged against people that go to voting booths. It's a system rigged against people that go out to caucuses. It is a system that is rigged in favor of the rich and the powerful and the politically connected.
I wish there was a magic spell to stop it, but there isn't. The reality of our current situation is the means we have to stop theocracy is to vote against it.
Actually, since our Constitution is foundationally opposed to theocracy, we shouldn't have to vote to stop it. So, if we do wind up having to vote to prevent theocracy, you should take that as an indication that the people we've already voted for have failed us.
Well, the first thing I do as president is sign the Freedom of Choice Act. That's the first thing that Now, the Freedom of Choice Act is not my highest legislative priority.
So in the beginning of that video, you have 2007 Obama, and in the end, you have 2009 Obama. Let me give you more context. In 2007, Obama promised Planned Parenthood that the first thing I do as president would be to sign the Freedom of Choice Act, which effectively codifies Roe v. Wade. Now he says the bill is, quote, not my highest legislative priority, as he put it at a recent news conference. This is from a New York Times piece in May of 2009. And then in that same piece, by the way, you have Obama capitulating to the right-wing zealots, to the theocratic authoritarians in this country to craft abortion policy. I'm not even kidding. Let me read you. Obama is also reaching out at his direction. His top domestic policy advisor, Melanie Barnes, is convening a series of discussions with people on both sides of the debate with a goal to draft a set of policy recommendations by late summer. We're not interested in what right-wing zealots have to say about women's bodies and whether or not they should be able to control their bodies. Not interested in individuals who don't respect our Constitution, don't respect equal protection, regardless of what your identity is. This is a complete and utter disaster, not just for women. And let's be clear, the priority here happens to be the women who will suffer the consequences of the Democratic incompetence here. But let's also keep it real. This is a disaster for the Democratic Party. They are in denial about it. They think that politics as usual, everything is totally fine. All we're gonna do is talk about the boogeymen on the other side, and people, they're gonna do as they're told, and they're gonna support us no matter what. Because what other option do they have?
You mentioned your anger because you had received a text message from the Biden campaign. Why is that?
So I received a text message from Joe Biden's campaign yesterday saying that the Supreme Court had overturned Roe versus Wade and that it was my responsibility to then rush $15 to the Democratic National Party. And I thought that was absolutely outrageous because my rights should not be a fundraising point for them or a campaigning point. They have had multiple opportunities to codify Roe into law over the past 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and they haven't done it. And if they're going to keep campaigning on this point, they should actually do something about it.
She's furious, as anyone should be, over how Democrats have both failed to accomplish what they have campaigned on, including the bare minimum of protecting our rights. And their attempts to essentially fundraise off of this, right? The amount of money they've managed to fundraise off of this after the draft opinion was leaked more than a month and a half ago. What have they done since then? They have fundraised. In fact, in just a few days following the leak of that draft opinion, which is a massive red flag, a warning sign indicating that Roe would be reversed, Democrats raised $12 million after Supreme Court leak of draft abortion opinion. Let's get into some more details on that. As The Hill reports, Act Blue, a small donor fundraising initiative that supports Democratic candidates, reported the $12 million was raised from the time of the leak, which was on a Monday night, through midnight on Wednesday. Okay, so over the course of 2 days, they raised $12 million from individuals who were like, what can we do to stop this? Okay, iceberg straight ahead. What can we do to stop this? And the Democratic Party, of course, they sent their fundraising emails. The situation's dire. We got to support the Democratic Party. And unfortunately, some unfortunate souls thought that this opposition party to the Republicans would actually do something effective with that money. But no, they actually ended up using that money to support anti-choice candidates, including Henry Cuellar in Texas. Give us your money so we can help Representative Henry Cuellar, a conservative anti-choice Democrat, get reelected, even though there is a progressive running against him, even though that's a tight race and there's a good chance she could win, Jessica Cisneros. But no, Democratic leadership did not endorse the progressive challenger to this conservative Democrat. They did quite the opposite. Voters today are going to notice that they have less rights, and the stripping of their rights happened when a Democrat was sitting in the executive branch as the president of the United States, and Democrats had control of both chambers of Congress. Ordinary Americans are not interested in hearing about arbitrary Senate rules like the legislative filibuster. Ordinary American voters are just going to notice, hey, is my life better or worse under Democratic leadership? And to be quite honest, it feels like we still have Republicans in charge. And the response we've gotten from Democratic leadership following the reversal of Roe v. Wade tells you everything you need to know about how ineffective and impotent this party really is. So a lot of left-wing pundits, activists have been calling on the Democratic Party to expand the Supreme Court, to dilute the conservative activist majority. But Biden's like, nah, I can't do that. Okay, what about doing away with the legislative filibuster? And remember, the legislative filibuster means that you need 60 senators to vote in favor of legislation in order for it to pass, meaning anything we care about will be blocked in the Senate. Is Biden willing to do a damn thing about that now, knowing that women's reproductive rights are not constitutionally protected as a result of this right-wing theocratic Supreme Court? No, he's not willing to do that either. So in other words, he's willing to do jack, but donate money to him. Because what? He's going to give a sleepy speech? He's going to call on Congress to do what he knows Congress cannot do as long as a legislative filibuster is in place? No. If you're looking to financially support anyone, the last group of people you should be supporting are members of Democratic leadership or the Democratic National Committee when they have abandoned you, when they have not fought for you, when they've taken your money and they've done terrible things with it, including supporting people like Henry Cuellar. By the way, Pelosi and Clyburn supported right-wing Democrat, anti-choice Democrat Henry Cuellar after the Supreme Court leak. Now, they don't care about you. And look, for the Democrat defenders on social media, if you think you're going to shame women who are enraged today into supporting candidates and Democratic Party members who have failed them, you got to think about a different strategy. Brothers and sisters, you got to wake up. That is incredibly insulting. And I think it's really important for the Democratic Party to have a rude awakening regarding their failures. If we keep providing cover for them, they're going to keep failing us, and they have failed us in the worst possible way.